TADA! And welcome to Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You don't need to like, follow, or subscribe with any of my videos. I just put them out there where I can. Have a holly jolly great time doing so. It's a quick one today. Definitely. Because we're just going to have a quick chat about buses or coaches. I always wanted to have a bus, albeit a coach, on the layout near where the station is. Now, we're not talking about the station, and don't think you've missed out, even though for those with a keen eye in some earlier videos, you've probably noticed I have acquired the station and we have got it under construction. And while it's coming along nicely, not quite finished yet. So that's a video for another day. But what we did want to have with our station is to have a bus located in the background. I mean, it's a very fitting thing we usually see around a train station. Being the hybrid layout that it is, which is basically focusing on the UK, since that's sort of the trains we run, but it takes a lot of inspiration from Australia here where I live, and that's why you'll see this sort of crossover between different things. But of course, one of the most iconic things to see would of course be your traditional bus you see in London and that, which is the double decker red buses that we see. Unfortunately though, based on our location and probably more so with height restrictions and all the rest, I think the big double decker, particularly if we were to do it in the 00 scale, could just be a little out. So when I dived in, I had a bit of a vision of what I was looking for. And my first instance was actually to come up with the coaches that I certainly grew up and knew in South Australia where I grew up. At the time, the two main carriers were, of course, Greyhound coaches. And of course, we had Stateliner. And these were the ones that would do the regional sort of routes where we weren't necessarily easily serviced by train lines. So, of course, we had coaches that would travel the highways and often do runs, for example, between Adelaide and Port Lincoln, that could be 600 kilometres and then another 600 kilometres back. Apart from carrying passengers, they also would be used for freight services as well. Stateliner in South Australia certainly still runs to this day. Here's the depot as seen in Adelaide. And of course, here is the depot which used to be located here in Whyalla, South Australia, which is where I grew up, and has recently moved to what could now be considered the centre of town. And of the different buses they had, usually Dennings, Volvo were some of the key names we'd see. And they also did actually have double decker buses as well. And in fact, one in particular, which I can honestly say I never did get an opportunity to ride on, has to be this particular model here, that actually featured a compartment behind the back wheels that was not interconnected with the rest of the bus. To get down to it, there were separate doors you'd have to do from the outside. So when the bus stopped, you'd need to do it. There was a communication system to the driver in case of emergencies. And this bus here, the Greyhound bus, I actually did take a trip from Adelaide to Whyalla on when I was about 5 to 6 years of age. I was quite young at that time and only have vague memories. And I certainly couldn't say it was this exact bus because I believe ours may have had a toilet on board. But I certainly remember this image. It was very iconic. And while I noticed there actually was a company making this in the 001 to 76 scale, I thought probably not. So here we are to where I did purchase a few different buses. This one seemed to fit the sizing of what I needed and is a 00 scale bus, but once it arrived, it did have a little bit of damage and really wasn't too attractive. Herpa, of course, always make a consistent model, and in this case, this is a HO 1 to 87 scale model. And I thought that's not too bad. Plus the fact there's nothing on it means that I could come along and apply my own type of decal or something to it as needed. Now we jump into the world of 00 scale, and this basically reminded me of the buses I saw in my local town, the ones that were traveling around town if you needed to go somewhere. They were certainly in a green and white type of livery, and I thought, oh yes, York City rider, that sounds pretty UK orientated, and I thought this could do quite nicely. Now remember, unlike the trains and other things that we can see in full detail, the bus won't be, because of course we've got a platform and it's going to sit behind it close to it. So we're really only going to see the top of it. So I thought what we'd do today is have a look and see what we came up with, and how sometimes scale sizes may not always be what you're looking for and in a particular image. So let's have a look and see what we can come up with. Let's just put you down in this particular configuration, because this is kind of, if you're coming down to eye level, where you're basically going to frame up what you want to see in a nice way, I think. You'll also notice just down the front here, you will see there's the red edging. So it gives you a bit of a eye level view to what we're looking at the moment on the station. Move this track cleaner out of the way. And I basically wanted a bus sitting somewhere in this prime piece of real estate. That's exactly what we're going to do. Let's start with our first coach. Now, that's not too bad. It sits all right, or does it sit a little bit on the low side? It's quite a nice looking bus. I notice there's a bit of plastic sitting in the box, which I think may have to do with either an additional mirror. It's quite nice. I don't have much about this at all, so I can't tell you about the manufacturer or anything like this, but it's plastic. I like the detail on the wheels. I do like this color scheme, and I'm pretty sure it is a European bus. But sitting it in place, I'm not too sure. Let's move to the next one. Next, we have our HO scale 1 to 87 bus from Herpa. And it goes without saying, as you can probably read on the top there, this is very much European. It's not going to get any better than that, but a pretty common shape of bus that we'd see anywhere. And as you can see, being that it's nice and clean and neutral, we could put our own branding or advertising across it. Let's just slide that one into place. So as you can see, sitting in place, and things are looking a little out of balance at this point. Certainly is something in the distance that was traveling back here. That's not looking too bad. And I'll come up in another camera view shortly to show you what that's looking like. The next one is from exclusive first editions. This is the Leyland National MK2, short one-door York City rider. And as mentioned, this is a bus that seems to remind me of the buses that traveled around town where I grew up. What's great about this particular model is it's a full metal construction. It certainly feels as heavy as it probably looks, and that is some excellent detail, particularly on those windshield wipers, and certainly all the way down to the number plate as well. Some extraordinary detail, and it looks quite the business. Let's pop it into place, and I don't see any harm in having that sitting there. That looks quite good. So at this point, we're going to pop this one back. But here comes the first choice I discovered by Trux Aussie Big Rigs and Buses. And here we have a scale 1 to 76, 1980 Denning mono coach, which is exactly as I remember them. So let's have a look. Now, while we're nowhere near Adelaide at the moment, I don't mind, because at least it gives that personalisation, that it's a little bit more of the history that I know that I can bring to this particular layout. And it's an absolute beauty here. There is no doubt about it. I really think this is the way to go. I really wanted the dual axles on the back there. It just has tremendous detail, and it's symbolic because this is a coach that I certainly did on those sort of trips between Adelaide and Whyalla in South Australia, a distance of about 400 kilometres on the road. Let's stick him into place, and most importantly, from that level that you're at, that height looks brilliant. We can just see the bottom, and of course the seats themselves just poke up to look over onto the platform. So I really think this is the bus I'm going to go for. Bringing you up now, you're in a position where all of these actually look like they could very much be in the right place. They all look quite nice, but they're all not going to quite meet our requirements. Of course, all of these will be up for sale shortly as I start to cull down excess requirements of the layout build. For those of you worried that it's not going to fit and may not have been prototypical coming through this opening, which again was never really designed to be a roadway, it was just excess to what I had and was going to do something to service the track feeds underneath. This particular height barrier hasn't permanently found its forever home, so as a result I've got some scope to have that moved. But if we literally just bring this around, you will notice it actually just fits to a clearance where it possibly could go under there. We're not going to further model that scene any further anyway. We have the intentions of having the coach sitting most likely here, or maybe one day we feel like driving it and it's going in this direction. Either way, I really think this is the winner for me, and I think it's wonderful. I may actually still just take a drop of light wash just to get over the glossiness of that roof, but that's pretty much it. I still want to leave it in a reasonably pristine type of condition, just something so it's not quite so striking there. This is definitely the bus and or coach for me. So that's the story with how this one is going to end up living on the layout. Well, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. This does now conclude the video, and we have found our bus or coach, whichever way you want to look at it. Being a sort of semi-regional type of area that I'm doing, this is a sort of area that would still be serviced obviously by a railway and by a network of buses and transportation like that. Of course, I like to think we're probably just on the outskirts of a major metropolitan area, maybe 200-300 kilometers away, so that perhaps on some commutes we're on the absolute edge of where perhaps a domestic service that runs a morning, daytime and afternoon and or evening shift to the city may exist. And that's going to become a little more evident because I've always wanted to see a series of the British Rail MK1 Blue suburban coaches on the layout running every now and then, which of course was something that was used in the denser areas. Not a very glamorous coach that's been brought to my attention, but certainly a daily workhorse that was used and I thought would break up our traditional BR MK2 intercity blue and white coaches, and indeed the usual freight that runs around. So just to bring a different passenger service will look quite nice on the layout. Coming up next, right behind me, the coastal scene is now complete. So expect to see that in an upcoming video. In the meantime, please do stay safe, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Toodles!